The next thing we're going to go over is our waterproofing for wood balcony decks. The wood balcony decks is probably one of the most challenging things that you can do with waterproofing. There's a lot of areas that you really need to be concerned about, not just the coating itself, but the flashing, you know, the plywood structure underneath you have to make sure is sound. So there's a lot of different things that need to be addressed when you're dealing with waterproofing wood balcony decks. So as I mentioned before, the flashing. There's a couple different areas that you have to deal with flashing on a wood deck. One is your flashing that goes from the plywood itself. This would be your flashing that would go behind your stucco. And then your paper and your chicken wire would come down over this, and typically you'd have your weep screed that would come down below here, you know, leaving a couple inches above the surface to allow that stucco to drain and breathe. Also your drip edge flashing. The purpose of the drip edge flashing is when the water rolls off of the deck, it rolls down that drip edge and it has that little kick to it, so the water drips and rolls away from the wood siding or whatever you have on the side of the house. So that's typically what that drip edge flashing is on there for. Those are very important areas that you have to address before you even start with the coating process. Once you get your flashing down and set, the first thing you're going to do in our system is apply this metal lath. You apply the metal lath with a staple gun, and you want to use about a 1-inch staple across the top, and I think we use like a 3/4 inch or 1/2 inch staple depth on this. You're going to want to staple every 1 inch along the seams where you overlap, and also along the seams of the plywood, and then every 3 inches in the field itself. You're going to want to make sure that your metal lath, if you have a seam in the plywood, if my seam is here in the plywood, you're going to want to make sure this bridges it. You don't want the seam of the plywood and the seam of the lath to be on top of each other. Also, you always want to overlap the metal lath about 1 inch or so. And then, like I said, you staple every inch along there. And then from there, when you start with the products, then you get your chemical bond from there. But the first bond that you're getting is the mechanical bond with the metal lath to the plywood structure itself. So the first product he's going to apply to this here is our product called Multibase. Now our Multibase goes on, and the basic function of the Multibase is to fill all of the areas of the metal lath in. It is a cementitious product. It's a single component like the other ones. You simply mix it with water and it's ready to go. Your coverage on your Multibase is about 40 square feet per bag.
40 square feet?
So once he gets the Multibase on there, then he can use his magic trowel to just kind of give it a good pass and kind of smooth it all out. So once the Multibase is dry, you're going to end up with a surface, you know, looking something like this. And then from here, we're going to start the waterproofing process. And again, we're going to be using the MULASTICOAT just like we use on the other systems. Like I told you, we use the MULASTICOAT for several of our systems for the waterproofing portion. And again, you're going to use the polyester fabric in your joint areas, and on the wood decks, you're typically going to be looking at covering up that flashing that goes between the deck and the house with the polyester fabric. So he's going to roll some of the, he's got to roll the MULASTICOAT on there first. So he's going to roll some MULASTICOAT over the Multibase and also up the flashing itself. And then he will embed that polyester fabric into that joint. Because just like on the water features and everything else, the joints are always your weakest point. And again, on this, you can tell color change, and this also gets the sand. because you are walking on this and things like that. So when you go ahead and start putting your cementitious coatings over the top of it, it just helps it to get a better bond. And we have two different products that you can use for this. We have the KRETE Kote, and we have a product called Top Coat. The only difference is the Top Coat has a finer sand in it than the KRETE Kote does. So he's going to hit it with a little bit of water, and then he's going to take the magic trowel to just smooth it out a little bit, take any of the little ridges and things out of there. And then once you have your base coat on, we're going to show you different techniques that you can do for the decorative finishes when we go over the decorative concrete portion of the demonstration. And any of those things we show you on the decorative concrete, you can apply to these wood decks as well.